Hey, welcome to Gator Studio. I'm John Briggs, with me Mike Huber, and we're in week 5 of our 10 weeks of winter training, and we're pretty excited to be here. Today we're going to present sealers.
Yeah, hard to believe we're halfway through already. Pretty
Halfway.
amazing, but we've created some great content for you guys, really educational stuff, and today won't be any different.
Like they say, Mike, time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yep, that's the idea.
So we're going to cover sealers, maybe some possible mistakes that could be made along the way. We don't want people to be afraid of sealers.
Yeah, there's no reason to be afraid of sealers. Sure, you can do things wrong, but if you listen to us, maybe you won't do anything wrong. And if you do something wrong, you'll be able to fix it.
Yep. And we're going to go kind of fast. There's a lot of things to cover, and we want to show you a couple different little demos, tricks of the trade, best practices, if you will.
So first off, little housekeeping stuff. We got this Demio platform. If you go where that blue arrow is pointing, that will bring you to full screen mode, give you the best viewing experience. That little circle that's flashing opens up the chat window, that little line pointing to the arrow. That will allow you to ask any questions. We'll make sure we get those answered either live here, or we'll have some of our guys, reps behind the scenes, get back to you. How about prizes, John? Every year we do prizes, don't we?
Yeah, we like to give away prizes. And what are we giving away? So Yeti, looks like we're giving away some Yeti stuff.
Yeah, Yeti backflip cooler, some Yeti tumblers, Amazon gift cards, cookies.
Cookies.
Just our way of
Cookies are
saying
always good.
thanks for the business throughout the year, right?
Yep. So sign up. We will give that stuff away every week.
And last week we had some winners, so
We did have
throw
some
those up
winners.
there real quick.
And are we supposed to be able to read this without reading
Yeah, it looks
glasses?
like Robert from Horseman Brothers out in Missouri was the winner of that big hopper backflip cooler. You can see our other winners up there. Hey, thanks for watching
Yep.
our shows. Thanks for signing up for that raffle. We appreciate it.
Congratulations, Robert. Fill
Right.
that cooler up. Yeah.
With what? We won't. We'll leave that up to you.
We'll find out sooner or later. Hopefully.
All right. So
Where do we start? With sealers.
I think we better get going before they get bored of
I
us,
know.
right?
What is a sealer?
Well, what is a sealer? Sealers help to protect.
no.
They help to enhance, right?
Mhm.
So we can do a couple different things with sealers, but I've got some sealer right here for you.
Wow. Look at that. Can I just see that? That is.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
I'm thinking.
Should we
this
put that
is-
all over your pavers?
I'm hoping this isn't going to happen when I put it down on my pavers, and I think that's what a lot of people are scared of. Something bad happening.
Right. So we didn't lie to you. That is sealer, right? That is actually the acrylic. That's
Chunk of acrylic.
the plastic that forms that sealed effect on the surface of your pavers. Normally, it's dissolved in solvent, dissolved in water, depending on the type of sealer. That happens to be all of that material that's left over once the sealer evaporates.
So perfect. Right away, we start by scaring you by showing you that. So again, what we say, a sealer is going to protect, or it's going to enhance, or do both.
Right, that's the whole idea. So
Two simple things.
we've got pavers. We spent a lot of money on them, natural stone, whatever the project may be, and those sealers can help protect from acid rain, spills and stains, different things. They can make old pavers pop, kind of enhance that color a little bit. So
Right. So we have an old pavers and a homeowner. Hey, I want to make that look new and fresh again.
yeah, and hey,
we
maybe
can
it
seal
won't
it.
look new, but it'll definitely look improved.
Bring back
right?
some of the color, maybe. and
Rejuvenate it,
it'll be
enhance it a
new
little
look.
bit. So many reasons to use a sealer. It's a great idea, and we're going to walk you through some of the common myths and common issues that we see in the sealer industry, and
Right.
got reasons that people tend to stay away from sealers.
And I think there's not a lot of them, really.
Well,
A
but
couple very specific things that can cause issues with sealers.
the first
and-
one we get is that ping pong ball when you ask the question of how long do you wait before sealing, right?
Right, right. Well, waiting is I don't think it's that tricky, but look, when you ask, you've got these beautiful pavers down and you open the catalog and it doesn't matter what manufacturer it is, typically it's going to say, 90 days, 60 days?
Maybe a whole year.
Maybe a year. What's the real answer?
Well, the real answer is that we need to allow those pavers to go through some weather cycles, right? So
Right.
it's not necessarily a set amount of time. It might be 30 days. You get rain, dry weather, and allow that to cycle a little bit. It might take 6 months to get that cycling to happen.
Right.
But what's the importance of that cycling?
Well, those weather cycles are going to cause the paver or natural stone take in moisture, dry up, bring moisture back up to the surface, and continue that cycle. So you might get some things popping up on a natural stone. You might get some iron oxide popping out of there.
Right, or mineral deposits.
Yep.
What about a paver?
Well, paver's a little bit different, typically more porous than most natural stone, but you're still going to have those reactions. You could get efflorescence.
Right,
coming to the
efflorescence is
surface.
pretty common, and that can happen. So you're taking materials, whether it's stone that was buried in the ground for millions of years that you
Yep.
just cut up and brought to the surface, now it's exposed to weather cycles, or a manufactured paver that may not be seeing any water until it's actually installed on your
Right.
job site. So we need to let that water work its way in
Okay.
and work its way out.
So we waited our time.
All
Right?
right.
Well, okay, I've got this beautiful patio. I want it sealed. I don't want to get stains on there. I've waited my 90 days. Now what do?
You wait some more. No. As long as you've gone through those weather cycles, now you're ready to figure out how to apply some sealer. But before you actually apply that sealer, we've got to get that surface ready.
Right.
So simply waiting that time isn't enough to prepare the surface for
We've got to clean
the
it.
actual sealing, right?
We've got to clean it.
So what can we have on the surface?
Well, you name it. I think we could have organics, all sorts of different
Just
stains.
regular dirt and debris, right?
Dirt blowing over,
Let's
all sorts of
Cut to that
different things.
overhead shot on our material here. So
Yeah, we got some pretty dirty pavers here to show you.
we've got a nasty piece of bluestone. This has a lot of dirt and debris on it. So you wanna blow that
Oh
blow
my
that off,
God.
John?
You can
Can
see
you-
that, right?
So you can't slap a sealer down over top of that, right?
Yeah, I would
First-
hope that wouldn't be in someone's.
First of all, you're going
patio.
to lock down all of that dirt to the surface and glue it to the surface. Your sealer could be discolored. Maybe you won't lock it down and glue it to the surface and it'll all start peeling off. So you can't seal a dirty surface. And
Right.
that was pretty dramatic,
That
but
is.
hey, any dirt on the surface is going to interfere with the bonding of a sealer.
This might be a little more typical. If you take a look at this one, Ryan, can you hit that from the top? So again, a lot of dirt there. You can see there's actually, though, Mike, there's some dirt that you could just brush off of there. So, I mean, even before we start cleaning, leaf blower,
Yeah, leaf blower, hard bristle deck broom, maybe even soap and water in the hose is a good start.
okay.
But if you've got something like that, that looks a little bit more than just dirt, right? I see some moss, mold, kind of mildewy type growth on there. I know in many markets, leaf stains are pretty common,
you know
right?
what? Up in my neck of the woods, certainly in the Northeast and in New England, leaf stains, any kind of organic stain like that, any kind of leaf sitting on there, sits through the fall, gets wet, winter, leaf stain
Really
there.
works its way in there, right? That's why they call it a
spring comes
stain.
and there it is. It looks like a fossil on the paver.
Right.
Probably the hardest thing, I think, to get off.
Well,
in
many
terms
stains
of,
are difficult to get off, and what works on one stain might not work on another. So soap and water is going to have no effect on a leaf stain. You can
Right.
blast at it all day with a pressure
Yep.
washer, and
What
you're not
about
going
acid?
to get
Can we put
anywhere.
an acid cleaner on a leaf stain?
You can, but it's going to have minimal effect. So even
Okay.
our efflorescence cleaner is really not ideal for an organic stain like that.
But
Moss,
you
mold,
know
and
we got a
mildew.
trick for that, right?
Of course we do.
Yes, we do.
So it's really simple. Pool shock,
Pool
right?
shock.
You can buy it $2-3 a bag, 1 pound sack. You can put it in a 5-gallon bucket, fill it up with water, and that is a miracle product.
It is.
High
It is.
chlorine solution
Yep.
makes those moss, mold,
Yep.
mildew stains and leaf stains disappear in front of your eyes.
$3 and you're going to have a beautiful looking patio if you have leaf stains on there. Any
Yeah.
organics.
And again, you don't want to seal that in because if you seal it in, you're not going to be able to clean it in the future.
Right.
It's trapped underneath that sealer. So
Yep.
we have a question or two.
I believe the first one is, what about clay? Can you use this on clay?
Well, we didn't get to any sealers yet. You
Yeah.
certainly can use sealers on
Yeah.
clay.
Well, we could use a cleaner if that's what they're asking.
That's
yes.
true.
Yes, certainly you can. Yep.
One thing to keep in mind is that clay typically is very porous. So we'll touch on, why that matters and some
Yep.
kind of workarounds.
And
But,
we're going to show that. We've got some different stones and different things we're going to go through.
but as far as a cleaner goes on clay, I would recommend wetting it down before you apply the cleaner and then rinsing it off very well afterwards to make sure you've gotten that material off
So
the
we're cleaning.
surface.
We get all the general debris off. We've got most of it off. Now maybe we have some
Well,
spots on there.
Sometimes once you get rid of the dirt, you see what's underneath, and it may
Right.
still not be perfect, right?
Right. So we've got some different stains.
Could be rust stains, could be, I think you had a party last weekend, right? And
Well, I always like to talk about my wife's friends and late at night and, the red wine and oops. And you wake up the next day and there's a nice red stain on your.
yeah, and then you got to get your
Pavers.
newspaper and you find out her car leaked oil all over your paver driveway
Sure,
too, right?
there's that too. That's probably my car more than someone else's car, but yes.
But you can take care of those stains. It's pretty easy, right?
Yep,
You just
we
need
have
to
cleaners.
kind of identify what it is and use the appropriate cleaner. So Alliance has rust remover. We've got paint, rubber, and tar remover. We have an XP oil and grease remover. And hey, those correspond pretty closely to what their name implies,
Yep,
right? Not
yep.
rocket science here.
So should we take a look?
Yeah, let's take a look here. So this one happens to be an oil stain, right? And we applied our XP oil and grease cleaner to it. That XP oil and grease cleaner is kind of a paste. It's really not a,
Right.
a liquid so much that you scrub around and take off. You would
bring
actually
that over
apply
and
this
show ya.
material to the oil stain and wait for it to dry.
Yep.
As it dries out, it's going to suck that oil out of the pores of the paver and into the cleaner itself.
Ryan, if you could go from the top down. So you can see we put this on, it was a cream. The cream starts to dry up, pulls the stain up out, and then we just leave a powder there. This one's still a little bit wet. We did this not too long ago.
Right, but just brush that powder away and come in, maybe a little soap and water to clean up
Right,
that
might
white
leave a
residue.
residue. Yep, okay.
And you're ready to go. Now, you may not get 100% removal on a stain, right? We're talking about degrees of improvement with any type of cleaning and sealing. So maybe it's 50% better.
Okay.
Maybe it's 99% better. You don't really know until you try.
Yep.
And you can keep applying, get that stain cleaner and cleaner. Typically, the older a stain is, the harder it is to get out.
Right. Deeper into the pores, if you
Yep,
will, right?
deeper
So
into the pores.
might have to take a little more work.
One thing to bring up real quick, hey, say you spilled citronella wax, or you've got something that's, on the surface of the paver, you need to scrape it off or scrub it off. Make sure you use something that's either plastic, brass, or nylon. You don't want to be scrubbing at your surface with a metal putty knife or a metal brush, because that can embed iron in the surface that'll later turn into rust
Rust
spots.
stains.
So you simply trade one problem for another.
But we have a rust remover.
We do. All right, so
No problem too big. Okay.
let's say you've taken care of all those spot stains, right? If you have that oil, XP oil and grease, if you've got rust, use the rust remover. If you've got something else, Google's a great resource, right? Somebody's probably
is a
tried
great
to clean
resource.
that stain before you have and can tell you how to get that off of concrete pavers. My go-to to start with is usually always soap and water. I
Right.
usually try soap and water and a scrub brush and see what happens.
Now he tells me.
Yeah.
Soap and water.
Simple.
Simple.
So we have all our spots cleaned up, right? Are we ready to seal?
Nope. I
What
know
if-
why.
What if
I know
we-
the answer
What
to
if I
this.
pressure wash the whole thing?
Well, pressure washing, look, you can pressure wash. That'll maybe get some dirt off the surface, but it's only going to clean the surface.
Right.
And you got to be careful.
Yeah, you do have
You
to be
don't wanna
careful
etch
with a
the
pressure
pavers.
washer. Don't use that 0-degree tip. Make sure you're
Right.
using a fan tip, 25 degrees or more. You're staying far enough away from the surface of the paver that you're not causing any marks
Right.
or damage to the pavers or
Ultimately, though, we need to use a cleaner in order to open up the pores.
Right. Chemical cleaning is absolutely necessary as a preparation step for applying sealer. No matter how clean those pavers may look, whether they're new or old, whether you've pressure washed or not, chemical cleaning is vitally important. So we need to make sure that we do an efflorescence cleaning. That will remove any minerals, any efflorescence from the surface. That'll open up the pores of the paver so it's ready to accept and bond well to the sealer.
So even if there's no efflorescence on the patio, and I'm going to seal, and my patio looks pretty clean, even after 90 days, I blow it off and I wash it really good, looks good, soap and water. I don't see any efflow. I still need to use efflorescence cleaner.
100%. Yep. You definitely need to efflow clean. It's going to make sure that that sealer can bond properly to the surface. You'll run the risk of delamination, whiteness,
Right.
or even having that efflorescence stuck underneath your sealer for a very long time.
I have had plenty of contractors tell me through the years, I pressure wash and that does fine. It may look fine when you're done sealing after that, but like you said, the bonding, in a year, you may lose that. Year and a half, who knows how long it's going to last. But when you're using a light acid cleaner, efflorescence cleaner, opening up the pores, it's really going to accept that sealer deeper into the pores, and that's going to last a good long time.
Yep, so efflorescence cleaner is safe for pavers and natural stone. We recommend a 4-to-1 dilution, 4 parts water to 1 part cleaner. And we're going to mix that up for you right here.
I'm just going to show this.
All right, why don't you show that, John?
So we do have a sprayer nozzle, and it has 2 different, we got an A and a B. I think one is 4. So that'll already mix. You can put that on the gallon jug, put that on there, hose, boom, set it to your 4, and you're good to go. So that simple.
Right. That'll dose it out for you. Alternatively, mix it up in a 5-gallon bucket, right? 4 gallons of water, 1 gallon of cleaner. We're going to mix up a small little
Any
batch
tricks
here.
to when we mix?
Little trick, right? We always add the acid to the water, right? We don't add the water to the acid. So we're going to add our acid
Now that's
here.
not just for spray or whatever either, right? With this foaming agent?
Right. You don't want to have most of a bucket of foam and no actual cleaner mix.
Right.
So, hey, we've got it mixed up in our 5-gallon bucket. We need to distribute it across the paver surface. And how are we going to do that? Is that normally done with a little pump sprayer like this?
That tends not to get enough chemical out onto the surface
Right.
for what we want to do.
Once you mix up a
So-
batch of effluent cleaner, you've got about 5 gallons of cleaner, which is supposed to cover 200 square feet. If you use a pump sprayer, it's going to get stretched too far, and you're not going to get the right cleaning action.
Yep. So what we like to do, use a spigot, right? Use a watering can. A lot of times we'll open up the holes. So maybe you take a spike or something and put a couple bigger holes, or drill, right? Drill a few bigger holes in there so it's coming out a little more generously than it would in the regular watering can end of it. But that's how we would do it.
Right. Efflorescence cleaning is a simple chemical reaction, an acid reacting with a base. And if you have too little acid, then you're not going to get enough reaction on your surface. You're not going to get rid of that efflorescence. You're not going to open up the pores of that paver.
Yep.
The acid will be neutralized, and you'll simply be pushing around dirty water on your surface. So that doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
Make sure you're getting enough material on the surface. You know, keep it wet through the entire process. You don't want it to dry. And we'll cut to that overhead real quick here, and we will show you a little demonstration of some pavers that clearly have some efflorescence on it, right?
Yep.
And we're going to put our cleaner on it.
Now watch this reaction.
So there's our
You
foaming.
can see that sizzling up.
Now, what's going to happen here is that cleaner will eat away at the efflorescence. Now, depending on how bad it is, you may need to do it multiple
Right,
times.
so efflorescence is down in the paver coming up.
Right, we're trying to break it down, burn it away,
Right.
pull any out from in those pores that we need to in order to clean the surface and get it ready for sealer.
Right.
So a couple applications may be necessary, but it's really quite simple. You know, we just apply that sealer. As long as we see foaming, then there's still a reaction happening.
We know it's there. I think too is we always say kind of find that sweet spot, right? You go out to a job. Most of our salespeople know at this stage of time, they look at a job, there's efflow, they say, yeah, 4-to-1's going to do that. That's going to work. But you might need to tweak a little bit, but try an area first. Always try a spot, see what it does for you, and then get your right mix, and you'll know it'll work. Ultimately, if you can do it once, that's what you want to do.
Right, that's the idea, but you need to make sure you know what you're working with, right? Some natural stones are softer, so you don't want to go as strong.
Right.
Some pavers are stronger than others, and you get a feel for just what ratio to use over time.
Yep. So let's say we've got the whole job clean, everything's nice. Now what do we do?
Well,
We got a lot of sealers to
I think
pick
we've got to
from.
figure out which one we're going to use, right?
Yes. So
How do
are
we choose
gonna-
the right sealer? You know, choosing the right sealer can be pretty tough. It's a little bit confusing. You've got film forming and non-film forming. You've got color enhancing and non-color enhancing.
Well, we've got natural stone,
know,
we've got concrete
how do
pavers,
these
we've got
things-
brick pavers, we've got granite. I mean,
You know, how do these things all come into play, and how do we choose the appropriate material, right? So I guess let's start with that clay brick, right? We had a question about clay brick, so here is a clay brick.
clay brick,
Now-
very porous.
It could be. This one happens to be very porous, but we've got some material that is very dense when you talk about clay brick.
But knowing that it's clay, inherently, it's going to be damp a lot, isn't it?
Right, it's typically going to be
Does clay ever cure?
typically going to be very wet. You know, have a
Yep.
lot of moisture traveling through it. So we probably don't want to put a film forming sealer on that, for example. A film forming sealer forms a plastic layer over the surface. And a plastic layer over the surface of something that absorbs a lot of water and releases a lot of water is probably a bad idea, right?
Right. It's going to trap some bad things in there,
Yeah,
which we don't
water
want.
condensation, you know, anything that's
Yep.
trying to migrate its way through, so not really all that ideal.
So water-based sealer,
So water-based penetrating sealer.
penetrating sealer. So our
Yep.
natural look would be perfect for clay.
In fact, it's the only material that we recommend for
Okay.
clay brick.
So hopefully that answered the earlier question. Our natural look sealer for clay brick all
Right.
day long.
So what else do we have? I mean, moving up the scale, maybe we go to a bluestone type material, right?
Yep.
So bluestone is going to be a denser natural stone material than a clay brick, but it's still going to be on the kind of more porous, higher absorption rate of natural stones.
Okay.
We don't want to put a film forming sealer on something that can move that much water through it.
But it's so dense.
But it is kind of dense, so we're going to use a specific sealer for natural stone. And we'll touch on some other stone here, right? We've got travertine. So travertine's a pretty dense natural stone.
Yep.
That can't take a film forming sealer, just like the marble and granite we're going to show you. If you have something that's so smooth and dense that it can't really accept a film forming sealer to bond to the surface, it could peel off down the road, right? We
Right.
don't want it to peel off down the road. other potential issue you have is that a film forming sealer on something that's very smooth and dense will also be very slippery.
Correct. So it does seem counterintuitive, though. I mean, where we're going with this is the denser this natural stone, the more important it is to have a penetrating sealer.
Right, which is part of the reason why Alliance makes it pretty easy, right? We have one sealer that we recommend for natural stone, which is our natural stone sealer.
Right.
That's a water-based penetrating material.
Put this out
Oh,
here.
our natural
Our
look too,
natural
right?
look.
I misspoke there. We have
Yep.
two sealers that we recommend, but only one is color enhancing. So natural look and natural stone color enhancer, both penetrating sealers, both safe for all types of natural stone. We can't put a film forming sealer on natural stone and just cross our fingers and hope that everything will be okay,
It's going to
right?
flake off, probably.
Well, you might get away with it 9 times out of 10, but
Yep.
the time that it fails is not going to be pretty, and we'll show you
Right.
that a little bit later. So natural stone varies widely in its properties, and quite frankly, it's Mother Nature, right?
Yes. Yep.
Concrete paving stones are a little bit different. So concrete paving stones made in a factory.
Yeah, well, they're manufactured to a certain specification.
Right,
So
ASTM standards really dictate the density, the porosity, the water absorption. So with a concrete paver, we have certain characteristics that we can work with and tailor a sealer specifically to.
Right.
Gives us a little bit more leeway in putting a film forming sealer on a concrete paver. I think
So-
we have some questions.
Yes, George has 3 questions that he's going to put on the screen for you.
Can you read them?
Which we
please?
can't read, so you'll have to read them out or figure something out here. So back to that concrete paver, right? We know the characteristics of that concrete paver. We can work within those limitations, right?
We have a fair knowledge of what the absorption rate is with it.
So then we've got a wider range of sealers that we can suggest for general purpose concrete paver use. All right, back to the questions.
Yes.
I found that the Efflow cleaner wreaks havoc on poly sand.
I have never seen efflorescence cleaner damage polymeric
Yeah.
sand. Polymeric sands are polymer-based. Polymers are plastic-based, and acids do not react with polymers or plastics.
It would certainly be the application of that product that would wreak the havoc on the polymeric sand and not the product itself.
Right. So I mean, if you're
Pressure
washing it, if the joints are already soft and damaged in some way from the environment or site conditions, then
But
it potentially
the
could.
acid, the chemical cleaner wouldn't affect it.
How long do you wait between Efflow clean and sealing?
How long do you wait between efflow cleaning and sealing? Well, that goes
Do you have
back to
that
our
paver?
first point, the waiting, right? So how long do you wait? Well, you need to make sure that that paver doesn't have efflorescence on it anymore.
Right.
So even though we did clean that paver initially, there's still going to be some efflorescence when that one dries up.
But assuming everything's cleaned up, we use the efflorescence cleaner, the light acid cleaner, we've opened up the pores, and 600 square foot job, say 500 square foot job, typical size job. We did the patio in the morning, and maybe we come back after lunch, it's a little damp. Can we seal it?
Well, it depends on what product you're going to use.
Right.
So a water-based film forming sealer or a water-based penetrating sealer can go down on a damp surface.
Right.
A solvent-based sealer cannot be applied to a damp surface. So you have to know what product you're working with, and that dictates when you can seal. So I would say that, yes, a few hours later after efflorescence cleaning, if you're positive you got rid of that efflorescence, you could apply your water-based sealer.
Right. So we have products that can keep you working depending on the look you're trying to get.
Right. All right, questions?
Last one for now. Can you use efflorescence cleaner after you've sealed it, i.e. next year?
You certainly can use efflorescence cleaner on a sealed project. However, depending on what type of sealer you used, you may have a real struggle getting any efflorescence cleaned through that sealer.
Right. So that being said, we covered natural stone. We've got all sorts of different substrates, if you will. We could put all different sealers on, depending on what it is, what combination. So we figured out, hey, we want this sealer on this paver, and now we need to apply it somehow.
Well, let's actually do a little test with that piece of bluestone there.
Okay.
I'd like to show everyone this natural stone install because it is kind of unique and different. Most of our sealers you apply and then you just allow them to dry naturally,
Yep,
right? They
right.
leave a film on the surface if they're a film forming sealer. They penetrate down into the pores and protect if they're a penetrating sealer, but the natural stone sealer is a little bit different.
All right. So if I could, it's still a water-based sealer, is it?
It is still a water-based sealer, correct.
So water-based sealer, the water is what brings the sealer. Water dries away, sealer stays.
Right, we saw those chunks of sealer when we started the show, right?
Right. Solvent, that was a solvent-based sealer, right? So the solvent evaporated and the sealer stayed.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is no different. This is water carrying the sealer, right?
Right.
So we're going to apply it to this blue stone here. Can I have that cup there? So that one. So if we apply this to our blue stone, this is our natural stone penetrating sealer, you'll see that it darkens things up nicely.
So that's the enhancement.
That's the enhancement. And the fact that it's working its way down into all the pores of the paver and blocking off the pathways for things to lodge into the stone surface, blocking off the pathways for dirt to kind of grip into and stick onto is what's causing, giving you that protection.
Right.
Natural stone sealer is a little bit different than all our other sealers, though. This is an apply and wipe method, so that's kind of the reason we wanted to highlight this. You apply it and then wipe off the excess sealer from the surface. It's a silicone-based sealer. It works very well for natural stone, penetrates porous stone, penetrates very dense stone.
Right.
But
if we don't wipe that off?
The surface can be very slippery.
I know that for a fact.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
it
you
can
can have
be
an
real
ice
slippery.
skating rink if you don't wipe off that excess. If you're working on a blue stone, well, it might not matter because it'll all soak in.
Okay.
But if you're working on a travertine, a marble, a granite, that excess sealer really needs to be wiped off so that you don't get a slippery surface.
Okay, so before someone asks, if they do put this down and they don't read the directions because it's very clear on the directions and it is slippery, is there a way to fix that after
Yeah,
the
call
fact?
your alliance rep. We'll help fix it up for you. Give
There
you
you
some
go.
guidance on how to remove enough that it's not slippery.
Right. It can be fixed. It's a little bit difficult, but it can be fixed. Okay.
All right, so a lot of different products, a lot of different potential building materials. It can get a little bit confusing, but lean on us as experts. We've got a chart in our Advantage catalog, kind of shows you what products can be used for what materials and some characteristics of those
We've
sealers.
got samples.
We've got samples that we can get you to try things out. That's really good for managing customers' expectations
Oh, yes,
as far
it
as
is.
what something will look like.
Yep.
And our reps are a wealth of knowledge, right? They can point you in the right direction, tell you what to use, what not to use, and the benefits of certain types of sealers.
Right. Would gladly get on a job. We got a
Right.
lot of reps all over the country.
And that's really important because there are very few people that are experts overnight with sealers. A lot of it is just learning as you go, trying these different products, having somebody guide you along through the process.
Yep. So how about we move on to application?
Yeah, I think you got to use the right equipment to apply it,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
What is the right equipment there? We've got a lot of different tools, a lot of different things that we'll use on sealer jobs. None of it's super fancy, none of it's super expensive. It's really quite basic. So we're going to start with personal protective equipment. If we're using solvent sealers, they have, there's definitely fumes involved in those solvent-based sealers as that solvent evaporates. If we're using any sealer, we don't want to splash it in our eyes. So something like goggles, right? We're going to wear goggles when we apply sealers. We're going to wear a mask or a respirator.
So just when you thought you had enough of COVID, here we come with more PPE for you. We got to follow OSHA compliance, right?
Right.
So,
You want to follow industry
Yep.
guidelines, be safe, be smart. Solvent sealers kind of smell bad, so
Yep.
I wouldn't mind wearing that mask as I
Safety, sir.
apply them anyway.
we have another question, I think.
All right, what do we got?
All right, so this question comes from Dale and Kate. I get calls to seal older pavers from time to time. After many years, it is difficult to see any visible sealer after that many years if it has been sealed before. If working with older pavers, what if pavers were sealed many years ago with solvent-based? What happens if resealed with water-based?
All right, well, the general rule of thumb is that you never want to put water-based sealers over an existing solvent-based sealer job. And after a long time, it can be difficult to tell. One of the easiest things to do is go out and sprinkle water on a surface.
Yep.
If it soaks right in, chances are that sealer is pretty worn out, and you can go ahead and reseal it. The other way to test that water-based or solvent-based idea is to apply a little bit of xylene to the surface. If you apply xylene or Gatorine to the surface, which is a solvent, and the surface becomes kind of sticky or tacky, then it's likely it was a solvent-based sealer to begin with. There's still enough on the surface that you should simply go over it with a new solvent-based sealer, and not switch to
Yeah,
water-based.
visual's not always enough. If again, that's asking the appropriate questions too, because a lot of times the homeowner they won't necessarily tell you if it was sealed before.
Or they don't know what was used anyway, right?
Right.
So definitely something to be aware of, and it's very important because if you put a water-based sealer over a solvent-based sealer, it can't penetrate in, it can't form its film properly, it's very likely to turn kind of milky white looking
Right.
and not bond well.
Okay, so we have our PPE.
Yep, so
We're
we
all
protected
good.
ourselves.
We're wearing our PPE, and then let's see, we've got some rollers.
All
Roller
right, so
handle.
what about this roller? I don't really like the looks of this, John.
Yeah, I don't think I'd use that for pavers.
Right, so this is your typical paint roller that you'd buy at a big box store, Ace Hardware. That's not what we want to use. You'll see the sealers can damage these rollers if they're solvent-based. If it's water-based, you're still going to have problems when the sharp edges of your natural stone or your pavers start pulling all these fibers off and leaving them all over the job. So what do we want to use?
Well, we want to use a split foam roller. And you can see these are nice and clean. Nothing coming off of that. That yellow's also split foam. Two different ones. Why is that?
Some people might like yellow better than gray.
I don't think so. So, solvent, water-based.
Right, so the gray is a solvent-based roller. It has a cardboard core. The foam on it is solvent resistant. If you use one of these yellow rollers on a solvent job, it's going to balloon up real
yeah.
quick, separate from the core.
Glue comes undone.
You
It's a
won't even
mess.
get 50 square feet down
Right.
the road, so make sure you're using the right roller.
One more question.
Yes, this question is from Matthew. The mask you have is a P100. It's for small particle, but for fume?
You can get different cartridges for them, so it depends on what you're working with, but these cartridges are available for, organic vapors, acids, different things, so just make sure you have the right cartridge for your mask.
Versatile mask because of that. So,
Yeah.
and you don't need to spend that kind of money to get that, but if this is something you're doing regularly, it doesn't hurt.
Right. N95, activated charcoal mask for the fumes is appropriate if you can find one these days, but
Right. So we're gonna show how to use some of these products in a little bit, but paintbrush.
yeah, hey, if you need to cut in around the edges, right? You need to
Okay.
get around the outdoor kitchen or the columns on a project. You can use a brush. Now, you need to make sure you're using the right brush for solvent-based material, something solvent-resistant.
Okay. Cut in the lines, so nice and tidy.
Yeah, cut in the lines, tape them off. There's multiple ways to go about it. We'll show you that in a minute, but that's the general idea.
Okay.
Next, rolling's great, but spraying could be even better, right?
What about that plastic sprayer though?
Well, this plastic sprayer is really not the right way to go.
Okay.
If you happen to put solvents in a plastic sprayer, you're going to start melting this plastic
Right.
sprayer. Probably the hose is going to be the first thing to go, and it's going to blow up on you while you're working. Really not ideal.
So we'll get rid of it.
Well, hold on. This plastic sprayer, it's not even ideal for water-based products. Sealers for pavers have high solids content. There's a lot of physical material in there that we want to leave behind on the paver surface to form that sealed layer.
Right.
A cheap sprayer like this, that $10, $19 sprayer, isn't going to cut it. It's not going to be able to spray those solids evenly, consistently, and uniformly. So if you're going to use a plastic sprayer for water-based, you still need to spend $80, $90, $100
All
to
right,
get a
get a nice
good
one.
sprayer. Other option is just go to a metal sprayer. So this one happens to be a Chapin Extreme. It's a fantastic sprayer. Sprays all your water-based and solvent-based products, and you can maintain them, use them for years to come. We'll do a quick demonstration a little bit later. Sealers can be applied by a roller, but if all you're using is a pan and a roller, it's inevitably going to be really heavy where you start, get lighter, 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 then get heavy when you dip it back in the tray, get lighter,
Right.
lighter, lighter. So you're going to get an inconsistent look to a job that's only rolled.
We also have a lot of jobs in product that's varied in texture.
Right.
So I think rolling's going to help us out.
Yeah, the slit foam, the little lines that are cut in these rollers help it contour to a surface, but you'll certainly get better results by spraying and then rolling.
Yep. Okay.
So that's the idea behind a sprayer. What else do we have? Oh, hey, if we're going to fill up our sprayer with sealer, what do we need to do?
Well, we need to filter it because of those solids you talked about.
Right, you never know if there might be a little strand of something, a little bit of solid material, so we're going to use very simple cone filters, cheesecloth, something that allows us to filter out the material going into our sprayer, make sure we don't have any material that will clog up the tip and give us a frustrating experience as we're trying to do some sealing there.
All right. Do we want to do some of this?
I think we probably should. So we're going to cut over to our sealing demonstration here. how do you actually apply with a sprayer, right? Some tips and tricks here. It's not rocket science, but you need to make sure that you're doing it correctly. We have that Chapin sprayer here, preloaded up with sealer, but if you need to actually use this metal sprayer, you're going to use your filter, and you're going to fill up the sprayer with your filter. It seems we have a little bit of a problem. Our camera has gone down, but when you actually do your sealing project, filter out your sealer, make sure that you have clean material going into your sprayer. If you have gunk, it's going to frustrate you. Every 30 seconds, you're going to be having a clog. You're going to have to take your tip off. You're going to have to reset it, so it's very aggravating. All right, so John, we have a retaining wall there, right?
We do. So like any patio, there's going to be some things around there, whether it's up against the house, there's a retaining wall, something we don't want to spray. Obviously, we're going to have to block that off.
Right, so there's multiple ways you can go about it, right? You can tape it off with plastic, just like you would with a normal painting job in a house.
Okay, so you're saying I could tape this.
You could tape it.
Okay.
You could also come through with your paint roller, and you could roll the edge, your
Yep.
paintbrush, just cut it in by
Cut
hand.
those edges in, bring it out a little, and go with the roll. Yep,
Right.
Okay.
As long as you don't go too crazy, you want to try to apply a nice even coat along the edge, because you're going to need to blend your field into that later.
Right.
And the less time in between the blending that happens, the better. Now, if you do have a little bit of a visible difference between that area you cut in and the rest of your field, right after you install the sealer, that should dissipate over time. So it might look bad when you walk off the job, but I bet 24 or 48 hours it will look pretty darn even and consistent.
Okay.
Last potential option to eliminate that blending issue is to use a spray shield. So we could actually use this shield. John can block off the wall, the foundation of the house, whatever you have there, and we can actually just go ahead and spray here. So I'm spraying along here. John's got that blocked off, and it's pretty simple. Now, this is a textured surface, right?
A lot of texture in there.
Well,
I'm
we've got
seeing
some-
puddling already.
Yeah, high points, some valleys. We need to spray it, but then we also need to come back in and roll it to make sure that we even out any puddles, any inconsistent areas, and we have a nice even coat of sealer. Any puddles can cause a problem. We'll show you that in a minute. So I'm going to keep spraying. Now, if you are going to get into sealing, you've never used a sprayer before, I just recommend you buy your sprayer, fill it up with water, and take it out on the street or your driveway and get a feel for how it sprays. Sprayers work a little bit differently when they have higher pressure. As the pressure starts to dissipate, the spray pattern can change. If you're spraying water-based versus solvent-based materials, it comes out a little bit differently. You might want to use a different tip. So definitely some things to consider with spraying, but it gives you a very uniform, consistent, nice-looking job.
Right. I think with anything else, like you said, practice makes perfect. The more you do it, if you can practice, put some water or something in there.
Go out-
Practice with what you're getting out
Yep.
of it and figure it out from there. You can get really efficient just with that sprayer.
Right, and you'll notice that John was rolling right behind me. So you don't want to have the person who's rolling to even things out following 15 minutes behind, or that sealer's already
Right.
starting to get gummy and sticky and cohesive, and you'll start leaving marks, roller lines, pulling strings
Yep.
off the surface. So sealing's a two-person job. Make sure you've got one person spraying, one person following closely behind
And
with that roller.
We picked up all those puddles very nicely by using that roller.
Right.
So nice and clean.
So pretty easy to do. Definitely the way I would recommend installing any sealer if you're doing this day in, day out.
All right.
But now that we know how to seal, we know what
Yeah.
equipment to use.
Let's
we
get into the fun.
Still have to be tolerant of proper conditions. Proper
Sure.
conditions are key. If we don't work in the right conditions, if we don't have the appropriate surface temperature, the appropriate dryness or moisture, we're going to have a real problem. So we got a paver here, right? It's a charcoal paver. If we have this charcoal paver and it is 75 degrees out on a nice May day, what do you think the surface temperature is?
Well, first of all, sounds ideal. If I'm a contractor, 75 degrees in May. If you're in New England, that's a holiday.
Right.
All right. But yeah, 75 degrees. Well, it depends. If the sun's been hitting on that patio for a long time, it could be 100 degrees on that paver.
Right. And if you're 90 degrees in July, that paver could be 130, 140 degrees.
Yep.
Those things can be baking.
So when we talk about temperature constraints, We're talking about what this paver and how hot this paver is, not what the temperature is outside around us.
Well, we're mainly concerned with the paver surface or stone surface, but you need to be mindful of both, right? So we want both a surface and air temperature between 50 and 85 degrees, give or take, for all of our sealers.
Okay.
What happens if you don't respect that?
Well, I think we're going to show what might happen, but with a water base can be a little more friendly, but certainly a solvent can get ugly quickly.
Right. So the best way to know your surface temperature is use a little temperature gun.
Yep. We've got
These
a
things
little
are
temperature gun
inexpensive,
here.
allows you to get a feel for just how hot a surface is. So you might think it's only 85 degrees out, you can go ahead and seal, but that paver could be reading way more than that.
Right.
We'll speed up, we'll simulate the heat process since there's no sun in here and it's cold. All right, so that area that I just heated up, what do you get on the gun?
135 degrees.
All right, so 135 degrees, that's pretty hot.
That's really hot.
We wouldn't normally
Yeah.
seal a paver that's 135 degrees because we run the risk of causing all kinds of problems. Stringing, whiteness, roller marks. They all come from surfaces that are too hot or too cold, or even playing with it too long on the surface.
So when I was rolling over there, I was just back rolling, as we like to say a lot, just pulling it back once. You can go back and forth, but the idea is, and what we're going to try to show you here is, you can't just keep rolling over and over. Again, this is a solvent now, so the solvent is evaporating into the air. It's the sealers drying as it's on there, which in this case is the acrylic, right?
Right, so that acrylic is drying, but we can't keep playing with the surface as we're letting it dry. So as it starts to dry, it's going to be hard to see on camera, but we're getting all these little strings peeling off of that sealer.
You can certainly feel it on the roller. It's pulling.
Right, it's grabbing, and
Yeah.
we're starting to see some roller marks develop and those strings coming off of it. So with both water-based and solvent-based sealers, playing with sealer that's already
can
starting
see
to
it.
set up can really cause issues and problems.
If we can see you can't quite see the lines here, but we've got lines all across there where it's drying quickly.
So that underscores the importance of having that person follow you very quickly with that roller if you're spraying. You know, don't be coming along way later to actually touch that up and eliminate any puddles because that sealer's already become sticky and now you're making a mess.
Right. And then the flip side of that would be moisture, right?
Right.
If it was wet and we're trying to put solvent on a wet, damp environment.
So you really need to know what product you're working with and its characteristics because John's got a good point. You know, you can put water-based sealers down on a damp surface, but water-based sealers really don't like rain soon after they
Right.
start curing.
Right. So it could be a little bit damp. We really want it dry, right? But
Dry
it could
is
be a little
best.
damp. We put a water base down there and everything looks great and it starts drying and let's say, I don't know, it's about a half hour later or something and maybe it rains or the sprinklers come on.
Right.
That happens to us a lot.
So now you've got that sealer, the acrylic starting to form a film, and you're injecting water into it. And that tends to turn a sealer white,
Right.
which nobody likes.
Yep. So we see those little white spots.
On the flip side, a solvent-based sealer needs a bone-dry surface to go down onto, right? Those solvents don't mix with water. That's a
Yep.
bad idea.
Oil and water don't mix.
So if you mix those to begin with, you might get that whiteness.
Right.
Solvent-based sealers do dry really quick, though. So a rainstorm an hour and a half after you install a solvent-based sealer won't be a problem, but it probably would for a water-based product.
Right. I think another important thing is, you know, we used to say, oh, water base is a lot more user-friendly to put it down. But a solvent base can be more user-friendly to fix.
Right, and that's key, right? As a professional contractor, I would really be looking at using a solvent-based sealer more often than a water-based sealer, just because of the lifespan, because of the fact that you can fix it if you need to. Now, this is a pretty messy-looking paver here. We've got some nasty stuff on here. This one's got all kinds of heavy over-applied sealer. We've got sealer peeling off.
So there's that white you can see that we were talking about.
It's really not looking too good.
Right.
But you could fix that. With this much sealer on there, maybe you've got a little bit more of a problem, but
Yeah.
this is exaggerated, right? Typically, an application of Gatorine or xylene allows you to re-emulsify a solvent-based sealer. That means turn it back into a liquid.
Right.
So almost turn it back to the state when you originally applied it.
So basically, we're using a thinner. We're putting a thinner on there, turning it back to a liquid. You could technically take some of that off of there.
Wipe it off with a
while you're
rag if you
doing it.
needed to,
Yep.
yep.
And then we'd get a nice finish.
Right, then it would redistribute itself and rebond to the surface properly. Unfortunately, that trick doesn't work with water-based products. So
Right.
if you have an issue where a water-based film turns white, you have to strip that product off. You can't repair it.
Right. I think moral of the story is, read the directions, and it works. These things work if we're within the guidelines of, as a manufacturer, what we put out there.
Right. And I think we have some questions.
Yes, we have two questions. One comes from Gary. What temperature should I not put sealer down?
Any temperature that's above 85 degrees, surface or air temperature, ideally.
Or
you know,
below 40.
or below, 45-ish or so. If you push those extremes, you're not instantly going to have a problem, but you're more likely to have a problem. If it's 90 degrees, those pavers might be 120, and you might be working on a patio that's half in the shade from the house roof line. And
Right.
the part that's in the shade will turn out perfectly. The part that's in the sun where those pavers are baking is going to turn white, and you're going to have this split patio where people are not very happy with the outcome.
Obviously, there is a lot more to this, right? When you're looking at a job and trying to figure it out, how's the smartest way to work on that site? Where is the sun? What's the exposure? So there are other things to take into
Right.
consideration.
Many guys think, hey, it's going to be 105 degrees today. I'll just wait till 4 o'clock in the afternoon when the sun goes down to go out and seal the pavers. And that's really the wrong way to look at it. Those pavers baked in the sun all day and they're
Right.
super hot. You should go there at 7:30 in the morning and get your sealer down before the pavers heat up.
Good point. Another question?
Yes. So this one comes from Steven. Is there a moisture test to do before sealing?
You can do a moisture test before sealing. If you wanted to go out to a project and put some saran wrap down on the surface of your pavers, tape the edges, that
Right.
plastic film is going to trap any moisture that's trying to work its way out. So put it down, come back a few hours later, next day. If you don't have any moisture that's come up underneath that saran wrap or that film, then you're good to go. If it looks like the inside of a greenhouse,
Right.
then
It's a little
you want to wait a
greenhouse
little
effect,
while.
right? We've got you see the moisture in there, and no good.
Right. All right. So, hey, well, we were just scratching the surface here quite
Yep.
literally with sealers. There is so much to go over. I mean, I could probably talk for half a day just on film forming versus non-film forming sealers. There are thousands of different sealers out there, all for specific purposes.
Yeah, there are also some other benefits
Yeah.
from sealers.
There certainly are. All of Alliance's film-forming sealers are joint stabilizing sealers. So joint stabilizing sealers, what does that mean? Well, some parts of the country, they use polymeric sand predominantly. Other parts of the country, it's a mix of polymeric sand for a paver joint and regular concrete sand. And oftentimes, that regular concrete sand is stabilized by a sealer. So it forms a hard, cohesive material. Now,
So we
that's-
sealed some of this.
Right, you can see the difference, right? Very color-enhanced paver, that's got the sealer on it. These pavers were not sealed. So
Let's see if
we have
can
that
kinda
color
show the-
enhancement, we've got protection, and
Oops. Oops. So you can see what it does.
joint stabilized joints are not as durable as a polymeric sand.
Right. So polymeric sand's going to self-cure, if you will. If again, we're my backyard in the Northeast, freeze-thaw cycles, things move. Maybe
You've got flexibility, you've got durability, you've got a
Yep.
15-year warranty backing up that polymeric sand.
right. But will this help?
Joint stabilized joints, hey, that's definitely an option. They typically don't last quite as long. You're talking maybe 2 to 5 years, depending on the sealer type and how well you installed it and flooded those joints out. And they're rigid but brittle. So you do
Right.
have the risk of, any freeze-thaw movement causing a little bit of separation cracking to occur and things like that.
But if you have polymeric sand down and we seal over it, no harm, no foul.
Oh, in fact, it's going to make the polymeric sand even better,
That much
right?
stronger.
Sealers can protect and enhance a paver or a natural stone. They protect and enhance a polymeric sand joint the same way by decreasing the water penetration.
Okay. There was one more thing I think we needed to cover.
That's probably the most important thing when you
Yeah.
talk about cleaning and sealing.
So we need to manage our customers' expectations. It is a huge thing, and you can't be afraid to talk to your customer from every step along the way here. Mike and I just covered from when they initially engage you and say, "Hey, I want to seal my patio." Well, why
Hey.
do you want to seal your patio? First of all, right?
What do you want?
Sure.
Do you want color enhancement? Do you want protection? Do you have a natural stone that I can't put a film forming sealer on?
How about it? A lot of times it's as simple as, oh, when I looked at it in the catalog, it looked like this. This is what it looks like now that it's installed. I want it to look like this.
Right. Or
I want to protect it.
Or I like what it looks like when it's wet.
Exactly.
Or I
yeah.
don't like what it looks like when it's
Looks
wet.
great after it rains. I want it to look like that. So we have sealers that can do all of that, but that's that part of the expectation. The other part is we just talked about weather cycles. So I need to have this done by
My daughter's party, graduation party,
sure,
right?
or 4th of July, and you know
And that may
everyone's
not
swinging.
be practical, right? If you need to pressure wash this job, when you pressure wash, you might blast sand out of the joints.
Right.
You might have to come in and install polymeric sand, wait for that to cure,
Right.
come in, do an efflorescence cleaning, then come in and do your sealer. So that process can get drawn out. And if you happen to get rain when you thought you were going to install sealer, then
Sure.
the process just got longer.
I think the other part of that expectation is look at it's more than you are just going in there to seal, because you have to look at that whole job. If there are other deficiencies in that job, you have to take care of them. As a contractor, you should be taking care of those other deficiencies as you go.
Right, if you've got low areas where water puddles and ponds and you apply a film forming sealer to it, you might have areas that turn white because the water always sits on it
Right.
and causes a problem.
Yeah.
So you need to look at this job as a whole, manage those expectations. You know, we always recommend that you do a sample paver for the homeowner, make sure they know what that job will look like when it's done.
Yeah, not just do a sample paver, set it outside the door where they're going to trip over that thing every day they go out, so they know what that is going to look like and what the expectation is. So once you do it, there's no, oh, I didn't want that
Right.
look.
Another thing about expectations is the proper sealer thickness. When you run your hand across a concrete paver or natural stone with sealer on it, it should still feel like a concrete paver or natural
Right.
stone. If it feels like your countertop, if it feels like a piece of plastic, you have too much sealer on there.
Right, good point.
One thing to keep in mind is that certain wet cast products, you know, they have a smoother, denser finish to begin with, and they can become a little bit slippery. You know, if you put a film forming sealer on there, you can add a traction grit additive to your
Yep.
sealers. If
There's
you have
all
a film
sorts of
forming
different-
sealer, you can add grit to it. That gives you a little bit of traction, resistance to slip. But hey, make sure that you've discussed that with your homeowner and your customer, especially around pools, kids, things like that.
Yeah. So, moral of the story: we can fix most any problems, really. I mean, sometimes you're going to have to wait. Time's going to have to wait, but you're not going to compromise your installation.
Right. Use some common sense and reach out for assistance on your first projects till you get a really good feel for things. But sealers don't have to be scary. You don't have to run the risk of ruining a job, and you know it's not really that big of a deal.
And we do have we're going to a couple more questions, but we do have a lot of resources other than reps in the field that can help you out, other than Mike being, you know, at our disposal to help out. We also have our ebook. Our ebook is on the blog. You can go on the blog and find the ebook.
Yep. Ebook on paver sealing.
Yeah, and that's going to tell you everything plus what we've kind of talked about here, soup to nuts, from install to picking the right product to getting it down onto the ground. And I think we have a couple more questions before we close out. No? We're good?
No questions? All right. So
Okay, thought the hand was up.
I hope you had a enjoyable experience here, learned a few things. We can come back and answer any questions that you have down the road. So while you finish this thing up, go to our education portal. We've got all of our pre-recorded shows we've already done this year. You can sign up for upcoming shows, text alerts to let you know when we have more education coming up. Just a great idea to learn as much as you can, use these products properly. You'll save yourself some frustration, you'll get great results, and everybody will be happy in the
And
end.
I think another big key is this isn't a whole new set of skills that you need to develop. And most people already have a lot of these products to be able to install sealers and clean jobs and do the maintenance. So if you're a contractor out there, this really is, to me, kind of easy money, and we gladly share that with you, how best to go about it.
All right, so until next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, I hope everybody has a great week.
Take care. Good seeing everyone.